Beneath the hesitant dance of a flickering lamppost, a solitary figure coaxed an aching, resonant beauty from the wood and strings of a battered violin. Each note, drawn with a practiced hand, seemed to carry the invisible weight of years spent unheard, of a profound talent shrouded by the city's relentless indifference. His name was Elijah, though few who passed ever learned it. Coins, when they came, often landed in his open case with a metallic clink, offered by hands that never paused, by eyes that never truly saw the man or the universe of sound he conjured in the gritty urban air. He played not for the meager sustenance those coins provided, but for something far deeper, something that resonated in the hollows of his own chest, for memory, for dignity, and for the quiet echo of a promise made long ago to the woman who had first placed a violin in his small hands, his mother. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you believe quiet genius always finds a way, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Elijah had become a fixture on this particular corner, as much a part of the cityscape as the pigeons and the grumbling buses. His audience was transient, a blur of hurried faces and fleeting attention. Yet, he played on, his music a defiant bloom in a concrete desert. He was accustomed to the anonymity, to the subtle sting of being overlooked. It was a cloak he had worn for so long it felt like a second skin. But one evening, as the purple hues of twilight deepened and the city exhaled its weary breath, something shifted in the familiar rhythm of his unnoticed existence. A sharply dressed man, radiating an aura of quiet authority, stopped. He didn't just pause. He froze, mid-step, his polished shoes silent on the grimy pavement, arrested by the raw, untamed sound that sliced through the urban cacophony. As the final, lingering note of Elijah's lament hung suspended in the cool night air, a poignant sigh against the city's noise, the man, a figure of immense influence in circles Elijah could scarcely imagine, slowly sank to his knees. His composure visibly fractured, overwhelmed by an emotion too potent to contain. What had begun as just another sidewalk performance, another night of pouring his soul into the uncaring void, had, in that single, breathless moment, become an audition for something far greater. But what happened next would change everything. Elijah Washington had once known a different world, a world of polished floors and hushed reverence, of metronomes and the stern but encouraging guidance of instructors who saw in him a prodigious talent. His early life had been steeped in music, his mother, a church choir director with a voice like honeyed sunlight, nurturing his gift with every fiber of her being. She had scrimped and saved for his lessons, for better instruments than they could truly afford, her belief in him an unwavering beacon. "Your music, Elijah," she would say, her hand gentle on his shoulder, "it's a language God gave you. Don't ever let the world silence it." He had excelled, his path seemingly set towards conservatories and concert halls. But life, with its cruel and indifferent turns, had intervened. His mother's sudden illness, the mounting medical bills, and the crushing weight of responsibility had forced him to abandon his formal studies. The dreams of concert stages had faded, replaced by the harsh realities of survival. Yet, through it all, he had clung to his violin, the last tangible link to his mother, and the promise he'd whispered to her on her deathbed, that he would never stop playing, that her belief in him would not be in vain. His music now was a tapestry woven from those memories, from loss, from the quiet dignity he fought to preserve. It was deeply personal, profoundly emotional, a raw expression of a life lived in the shadows, but with a spirit that refused to be extinguished. The man who had knelt on the sidewalk was Arthur Harrison, the world-renowned director of the City Symphony Orchestra, a man whose ear was attuned to the finest nuances of musical expression, a gatekeeper to the very world Elijah had once aspired to enter. Harrison was a man of immense prestige, but also of deep artistic integrity, constantly searching for that elusive spark of authentic genius. The prevailing culture of the classical music establishment, however, often felt suffocating to him, its inherent conservatism, its resistance to anything that didn't fit the traditional mold, its subtle but pervasive elitism. He'd heard whispers of a street musician whose playing was extraordinary, dismissed by some as a mere curiosity, but intriguing enough to plant a seed of curiosity in Harrison's mind. This was the first time he'd sought him out. He had expected talent, perhaps, but not this primal force, this voice that seemed to speak directly to the soul, unburdened by affectation, yet possessing a technical skill that was unmistakable beneath its raw exterior. The city itself, with its endless symphony of sirens, traffic, and distant shouts, was the backdrop to Elijah's nightly vigil. His small, sparsely furnished room in a rundown boarding house was a world away from the opulent concert halls Harrison frequented. Yet, in Elijah's playing, Harrison heard echoes of the great masters, a purity of expression he feared was becoming a lost art. The final note of Elijah's piece faded, leaving a silence that felt more profound than the preceding music. Elijah slowly lowered his violin, his gaze distant, still lost in the world the music had created. He was accustomed to people moving on as soon as the sound stopped. He blinked, surprised to see the well-dressed man still there, not just there, but on his knees, looking up at him with an expression of raw, unadulterated awe. Harrison rose slowly, a tall, imposing figure, yet his demeanor was one of humility. That was extraordinary, Harrison managed, his voice raspy with emotion. Elijah, wary of charity or condescension, merely inclined his head, a silent acknowledgement. "Who taught you to play like that?" Harrison asked, his eyes searching Elijah's face. "My mother," Elijah replied, his voice soft, and used to such direct engagement. "And life." Harrison sensed the layers of history, the untold story behind those simple words. "I am Arthur Harrison," he said, extending a hand. "I direct the City Symphony." Elijah's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He knew the name. Everyone who loved music in the city knew that name. He hesitated for a fraction of a second before taking the offered hand. Harrison's grip was firm, respectful. Would you consider playing for me again? In a more suitable setting?" Harrison asked, the request both an invitation and a plea. Elijah felt a flicker of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years, a fragile, hesitant hope. He looked at his battered violin case, then back at Harrison. "When?" he asked, the single word carrying the weight of a lifetime of waiting. Harrison arranged for Elijah to come to the Symphony Hall the following afternoon, during a break in rehearsals. The grandeur of the hall, even empty, was almost overwhelming. The plush velvet seats, the soaring ceiling, the polished stage, it was a world Elijah had only dreamed of from afar. He clutched his violin case, its worn leather a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding him. A few orchestra members lingered, their curiosity piqued by the unusual visitor Harrison had personally escorted in. Elijah could feel their eyes on him, assessing, skeptical. He saw the subtle glances exchanged, the raised eyebrows. He was an outsider, his worn clothes and the story etched on his face marking him as different. One of the violinists, a prim woman whose expression was a mixture of disdain and professional courtesy, eyed his instrument. "Is that the violin you play on?" she asked, her tone making it clear she considered it inadequate. Elijah merely nodded, his face impassive. He remembered a similar moment years ago, a dismissive comment from a conservatory adjudicator who had looked past his talent to critique his second-hand instrument, his lack of pedigree. The memory stung, but he pushed it down. Harrison, sensing the undercurrent, stepped forward. "Elijah, would you play something for us?" "Anything you like." Elijah took his place on the vast, empty stage. The silence of the hall was different from the silence of his street corner. Here, it was expectant, judgmental. He closed his eyes for a moment, drawing strength from his mother's memory, her unwavering faith. He thought of her promise. Then, he raised his violin and began to play. It was a Bach partita, a piece demanding technical mastery and profound emotional depth. From the battered instrument came a sound so pure, so filled with longing and resilience, that it silenced the lingering whispers of doubt. The few musicians present leaned forward, their skepticism slowly dissolving, replaced by astonishment. Elijah wasn't just playing notes. He was bearing his soul, his music telling a story of sorrow, of hope, of an unyielding spirit. When he finished, a beat of stunned silence was followed by hesitant, then more enthusiastic applause from the handful of musicians. The prim violinist looked at him with newfound respect. Harrison, standing in the wings, simply smiled. He knew. The path forward, however, was not smooth. Harrison's decision to champion Elijah was met with resistance, particularly from Alastair Thorne, the influential chairman of the Symphony's board and a staunch traditionalist. Thorne, a man whose wealth and connections gave him considerable power, viewed Elijah as an unsuitable candidate for their prestigious orchestra. "Arthur, be reasonable," Thorne had said during a tense meeting in his opulent office, the city skyline a glittering, indifferent backdrop. A street musician? It's a charming story, perhaps for a local newspaper feature, but hardly appropriate for our stage. Our patrons expect a certain caliber. Harrison, usually a man of measured diplomacy, felt a surge of anger. Caliber? Alastair? His talent, his musicality, surpasses many who have graced that stage. He has a voice that needs to be heard. Thorne was unmoved. His background is unconventional. It could be perceived as a gimmick, a lowering of our standards. The dismissal, couched in polite but firm language, was a clear attempt to block Elijah. Harrison recognized the familiar pattern of exclusion, the invisible walls that kept true, raw talent like Elijah's on the periphery. Elijah, meanwhile, dedicated himself to preparing for whatever opportunity Harrison might secure for him. He practiced relentlessly in his small room, the notes filling the usually quiet boarding house. He studied scores Harrison provided, his keen musical intellect absorbing the complex structures, finding his own interpretations within them. He remembered his mother's lessons, her emphasis on feeling, on connecting with the heart of the music, not just the technical demands. Yet, the weight of expectation, the memory of past rejections, and Thorne's unspoken but palpable disapproval began to wear on him. There were moments of profound doubt, where the familiar despair threatened to engulf him. Was he chasing a phantom? Was he setting himself up for another, more public, humiliation? He would look at the faded photograph of his mother, her smiling face a beacon of encouragement, and the promise he'd made would resurface, strengthening his resolve. One evening, during a late rehearsal where Harrison had invited Elijah to observe the orchestra, a young cellist, moved by what she'd heard of Elijah's playing in the empty hall, approached him during a break. "What you played the other day? Bach, wasn't it?" "It was incredible," she said, her sincerity a balm to his frayed nerves. "Thank you," Elijah said, a rare, small smile gracing his lips. Her simple act of kindness, of genuine appreciation, was a lifeline. Harrison, frustrated by Thorne's intransigence but more determined than ever, decided on a bold move. He would feature Elijah as a guest soloist in an upcoming concert, a high-profile event. It was a gamble, staking his own reputation on Elijah's success. He announced it to the orchestra, framing it not as an experiment, but as the introduction of a significant new talent. The news sent ripples of excitement and apprehension through the musical community. Thorne was furious, viewing it as a direct challenge to his authority, but Harrison held firm. The pressure on Elijah intensified. He was no longer just a street musician, he was a symbol, a test case. The weeks leading up to the concert were a blur of intense rehearsals. Harrison worked closely with Elijah, not to mold him into a conventional soloist, but to help him channel his unique power within the orchestral setting. They selected Dvorak's Violin Concerto, a piece renowned for its emotional depth and technical brilliance, a piece that seemed to resonate with Elijah's own journey of longing and resilience. Elijah immersed himself in the music, each note becoming a part of him. He felt the orchestra around him, sometimes supportive, sometimes still skeptical, but always professional. Thorne made his displeasure known through subtle snubs and pointed comments to board members, trying to sow seeds of doubt about Harrison's judgment and Elijah's capabilities. The night before the concert, Elijah found himself standing alone on the darkened stage of the Symphony Hall. The silence was immense, pregnant with possibility and peril. He raised his violin, not his battered street companion, but a fine instrument loaned to him by Harrison, and played a soft, melancholic melody, a prayer, a farewell to his old life, a quiet hello to an uncertain future. The night of the concert arrived. The hall was packed, a glittering assembly of patrons, critics, and music lovers, all drawn by the buzz surrounding the mysterious soloist. Backstage, Elijah felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach, but beneath it, a core of calm, a sense underscore of readiness. He thought of his mother, wishing she could be there. He clutched the smooth wood of the violin, Harrison's violin, feeling its history, its potential. Harrison gave him a brief, reassuring nod. "Play from your heart, Elijah. That's all anyone can ask." The house lights dimmed. A hush fell over the auditorium. Harrison walked onto the stage to conduct, followed by Elijah. A polite ripple of applause greeted them, tinged with curiosity and a hint of skepticism from certain quarters where Thorne's influence held sway. Elijah took his place. The silence before the first note was absolute, a held breath. Then, he began to play. The opening notes of the Dvorak Concerto, usually so familiar, sounded new, imbued with a lifetime of unspoken emotion. Elijah's eyes were closed, his body swaying gently with the music. He wasn't just performing, he was communing. The sound that emerged from his violin was extraordinary, rich, powerful, yet exquisitely tender. It soared through the concert hall, filling every corner, touching every heart. He navigated the most demanding passages with a skill that was breathtaking, but it was the soul in his playing, the raw, unfiltered emotion, that captivated the audience. He wasn't merely executing the notes. He was living them, sharing his journey, his sorrow, his hope, his unwavering dignity. There was no artifice, no grandstanding, only pure, unadulterated music. Harrison, conducting with a focused passion, felt a profound sense of vindication. He watched Elijah, saw the years of hardship fall away, replaced by the incandescent glow of pure artistry. In the audience, Alastair Thorne sat ramrod straight, his face an unreadable mask, but his tight grip on the armrests betrayed his inner turmoil. The music washed over him, undeniable, irrefutable. As the final, triumphant chords of the concerto resonated through the hall, a moment of profound silence descended, deeper and more electric than before. It stretched, held, then shattered as the audience rose to its feet in a spontaneous, thunderous ovation. The applause was deafening, a wave of communal emotion washing over the stage. Elijah stood, violin lowered, slightly dazed, the roar of the crowd a surreal counterpoint to the quiet world he had inhabited for so long. He opened his eyes, saw the blurred faces, the standing figures, and a slow understanding dawned. They saw him. They heard him. Backstage, the antechamber buzzed with exhilaration. Elijah, still catching his breath, leaned against a cool wall, the vibrations of the applause still thrumming through him. Harrison approached, his face alight with a proud, almost paternal smile. He didn't speak, merely extended his hand. Elijah took it, their handshake conveying everything that words could not. A prominent music critic, known for his discerning and often sharp pen, rushed over, his face animated. "Mr. Washington," he began, "your performance, it wasn't just a debut, it was a revelation. You've reminded us what music can be." Later, Harrison would share a review that spoke of a new, vital voice, challenging the conventions and enriching the soul of classical music. The system, ever so slightly, had begun to shift. The next day, Arthur Harrison formally offered Elijah a position as an artist in residence with the Symphony, a role that would allow him to perform, to compose, and to mentor young musicians. Elijah accepted with the same quiet dignity that had defined him on the street corner. This was not an ending, he knew, but a beginning. The journey of healing, of truly reclaiming his place, would be ongoing, but it was a future he had earned, note by painful, beautiful note. That evening, Elijah returned to his small room. He looked at his old, battered violin, then at the gleaming concert program from the night before. A quiet smile touched his lips. He picked up the faded photograph of his mother from his nightstand. "I kept my promise, Mama," he whispered, a sense of profound peace settling over him. The city lights twinkled outside his window, no longer indifferent, but witnesses to a quiet triumph. He knew his journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long, long time, the path ahead felt illuminated, not by a flickering lamppost, but by the steady glow of earned respect and the enduring power of his song. The world now listens when Elijah Washington plays. His story, once a whisper in the urban wind, now resonates in concert halls and inspires those who dare to dream against the odds. He carries his past not as a burden, but as the source of his unique strength, a testament to the enduring truth that quiet genius, given a chance, can indeed change the world. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.